Alright everybody, Barbenheimer weekend is officially upon us.
But deliver us.
So I went to the theater last Saturday, watched them both back to back, had a meal in between, and have plenty of thoughts I want to divulge onto anyone who might happen upon this. I've never seen so many people wearing pink at a theater. It was pretty crazy that so many people seem to have been in on this collective joke that we've all been saying for the past couple months. I don't even think I've seen this many people in a theater since like Endgame, and it's pretty crazy that these two movies from two pretty like artistic directors are the ones that are getting people to flock back to the movies and not like Indiana Jones or something like that. I've seen a lot of people say that the Barbenheimer memes are kind of annoying, and even though I can't always disagree, I think that it's nice to just see something that makes people flock to theaters in this way. I don't think a Christopher Nolan movie would have nearly this much hype around it unless it was like The Dark Knight or something like that, where it has an existing IP attached to it. The only reason it's doing as well as it is doing is, I think, because it's attached to Barbie. So let's start with Oppenheimer, which is the one I saw first, which I believe might be the right order to have seen them in. Now to start, I can't say I'm a huge Nolan guy. I mean, I like all of his movies just fine, but I'm not someone who's always been like, I have to see the next Nolan movie in theaters as soon as it comes out. It's usually something I've caught later on. I feel like I got kind of burnt with Tenet when I did that. I was one of 5 people to have seen Tenet when it came out. I do like Nolan's movies a lot. I love The Dark Knight and The Prestige and Interstellar. I think those are great. I think stuff like Inception and Dunkirk is where I'm less high on him as some other people might be. But I was pretty excited for this one just because I really like Cillian Murphy. And I thought Christopher Nolan doing like a biopic was interesting and not something we'd seen from him yet. And I felt like his style was pretty well suited to it. And after seeing the movie, I can say that it was. And I would like to see maybe another true story helmed by him in the future. I think like this is easily the best lead performance that a Nolan movie's ever had. I think when you look back at Nolan movies, you have stuff like Heath Ledger's Joker, which is a supporting character that kind of stole the show. I can't think of a lead in one of Nolan's movies that was the thing that I latched onto, but that's definitely not the case here because I think Cillian Murphy killed it. It was also nice to see that Robert Downey Jr. actually got to act for the first time. I mean, unless you count Doolittle, this is like really the first thing I've seen him in after Iron Man, and I never saw Doolittle, by the way. I don't want that on my record. Also a lot of Alden Ehrenreich. He got to do a lot in this movie, which I was pretty surprised at, and I've always thought he was a good actor. I think Solo, while it's not like my favorite movie, I thought he was great, and I thought he was great as young Han Solo, and I would like to see him in more stuff. But onto like the movie itself, it is a very slow, very talky movie where characters are just kind of going to different locations and having different conversations. So if that kind of movie's not for you, this movie's probably not for you. It really is just this guy's life, and you really get to know him a lot and follow him all the way through it, which worked a lot for me, but I could see other people maybe being bored. The whole movie like builds up to the bombing, which is like something that we all know is coming, and when it finally happens, like the audience was like so silent that you could hear a pin drop. It was like really a great moment, and I think spoke a lot to like how the movie built up the anticipation of like what that was gonna look like, which is coupled by like the real life fact that like we didn't know how Nolan was gonna show that in a movie, and I thought it looked and sounded incredible. And like a lot of Nolan movies, the score like really tells the story, and like maybe in scenes where you wouldn't otherwise be emotionally invested, the music kind of swells in and captivates you and makes you feel more in line with what the characters are meant to be feeling. Some people call that manipulative. I don't think it is. I think it's just part of Nolan's style. I've also seen a lot of people say the last third of the movie is boring, which, without spoiling anything, it's like the more legal implications of everything that went on in Oppenheimer's life, and not so much of like the building the bomb and the history like that. It was more like social networky depositions and stuff like that, and I thought that stuff was fascinating. I could see why people thought it was boring, but I didn't. In terms of the things I didn't really like, there is this habit that Nolan has, and other people have talked about this in their reviews, but his sound mix isn't always the best, and it's hard to parse out what certain characters are saying at certain points in time. I guess the best way I could tell you is to just show you. Hello, the sound mix could be pretty distracting at certain points in the movie and made me miss a couple like key moments. But it wasn't anything super egregious, and I've seen Nolan movies where I could hear less. There's also like so many stars in here, especially like Roderick is in this movie, and he didn't really get any screen time. Maybe I'm the only person in the world who wanted to see Roderick do something, but I don't think I am. I think Roderick rules. It's a phenomenal film, and I would have liked to see just a little more of like certain people who popped in just for a second. Same with Josh Peck, who's in this movie for like a minute. With that being said, that's a smaller criticism. I think this movie is probably one of my favorite that Nolan's done so far. The ending was so solid too that it actually was like giving me chills. Some people in my theater kind of ruined that for me by like clapping. Like I did not feel like this was a movie where we should like start clapping, especially if you know what the last like line of the movie is. It just felt a little weird. That said, we'll move on to Barbie. So I love Greta Gerwig movies. I love Lady Bird and I love Little Women, and so when I heard she was doing this movie, I was pretty excited. As her first like forte into studio blockbuster movies, I think she nailed it. In my Mission Impossible review, I talked a little bit about what I felt like was missing in modern day blockbuster movies, and I feel like she kind of went right along that track of what I was looking for, with like really cool practical sets and good performances and all this stuff, and it never felt cheap, and it never felt like an overproduced movie that was just churned out and anybody could have been directing it. Like it did feel like a Greta Gerwig movie in the same way that Little Women feels like a Greta Gerwig movie. I think like Barbie Land itself was such a cool achievement. Like I was a little worried from the trailers that they weren't going to spend as much time in Barbie Land as I wanted them to, because it's such an impressive like build, but they go back there quite a bit, and the whole climax of the movie happens there, which I think was a good decision. And then like all the costumes and all of the props that were built, like I think like what was cool when this movie was coming out is that we were kind of getting these snippets revealed. Like, you know how every time there's a new Batman, it's like, oh, what's the new bat suit gonna look like? What's the new Batmobile gonna look like? Like, I think I like the they kept that energy for Barbie. Like it was like we had the Corvette revealed and we had the dream house revealed, and it really felt like this event. There was a lot of love for the history of Barbie and a lot of like deep cut references and jokes that were pretty funny and interesting to see. And the movie itself just is really funny. Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling both are pretty much the definitive vision of Barbie and Ken. I mean, as soon as they were cast, you were like, yeah, that makes sense. But I think the one that like stole the show for me was Michael Cera as Alan.
I like your jacket, by the way. Is that a snowboarding jacket?
No.
And he was in it more than I was expecting him to. I kind of thought he would just be like a joke gag character towards the beginning, and then he wouldn't really come back. But they do some really funny stuff with Alan, and he ended up being the highlight for me. Aside from just like the actual jokes from the characters, there were a lot of fun edits and visual gags. Like one point where the narrator interrupts the story to tell us something, and I thought that joke was really funny, and my whole audience was laughing like a lot. Not every joke lands. There's a joke about the Snyder Cut in this, which I thought was funny, but I think it's gonna not age particularly well in the future, because I don't think anyone 10 years from now is really going to be thinking about the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. The emotions also managed to like hit quite a bit. Not maybe as much as something like Lady Bird or Little Women did, but it is like very true to Greta Gerwig's style and had a very similar commentary and themes as her past movies, which is always good to see in a big studio movie like this. They really weren't afraid to shy away from criticism of Mattel and the Barbie brand in general and what that's meant for girls, both positively and negatively. My only real dislikes are that Will Ferrell plays the CEO character, or the CEO of Mattel, and it felt like the movie kind of forgot about him for a little while, and he didn't really end up being that crucial to the whole plot. When the characters go to the real world, you kind of expect the movie to go in a certain direction, but it doesn't really end up going in that direction, which was unexpected both in a good way and a bad way, because I think it made the middle chunk where they do go to the real world feel kind of like a side quest to the main plot. And then there's also these two human characters that get dragged into the Barbie land, and Well, I think what they do with them is pretty good. There's a whole dynamic going on between them that's not ever really put in the spotlight at any point, and the resolution to it is just kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Like, but they didn't really have much time. Like, I don't really feel like I know them as much as I know Barbie or Ken or some of the other major characters from the movie. So I would have liked to see them have like a couple additional scenes to like warm me up to them more. Besides this, I had a very fun time with it. I thought it was a good movie. I would watch it again. I would watch whatever Greta Gerwig does next, like those Narnia movies. But now that the kids have had their fun, it's us intellectuals' time to shine.